Emotional abuse in general is so often misunderstood, and that's exactly why people have so much trouble identifying when they're in an emotionally abusive relationship. And when the abuse is covert, it makes it even more difficult. I have a lot of experience with covert emotional abuse, and I can tell you, it's like a poison that kills you slowly. I once heard somebody call it death by paper cut, and that's a very accurate description. So what exactly is covert emotional abuse, and how can you die from a paper cut? That's exactly what we're going to explore in this video, so stay tuned. Welcome to the Common Ego community. My name is Christina, and today I'm answering the question, what is covert emotional abuse? And I'm going to answer it with 3 examples that I hope you can't, but you might be able to relate to. All right, so let's dive in. There is one common misconception about emotional abuse that I held on to for way too long. So that misconception is that emotional abuse and verbal abuse are one and the same, and that's not true. So in some cases, abusers will be more overt and they will tell you that you're awful, or they'll tell you that you can't do anything right. They'll outwardly hurt your feelings with words that are really not nice, right? But covert emotional abuse is different. Whenever I explain covert emotional abuse to anybody, I like to use the phrase plausible deniability. So a covert abuser will abuse their targets, but they'll always have that plausible deniability. Well, yeah, I acted that way, but I had to because of what this person did. Or, well, you know, I was just telling this person how I felt, and it's not my fault that it triggered something in them. But when you dig deeper into it, the things they're saying and doing are actually abusive. So now we're going to get to the 3 examples of covert abuse in relationships. And now keep in mind, these aren't the only examples, but I'm just using them to highlight what covert abuse can look like on a day-to-day basis. And remember, it's very subtle, but a covert abuser isn't doing just this one thing one time. Okay, let's get to it. So Tom is in a relationship with Chloe. Tom is a covert narcissist, and Chloe doesn't really know what that is or understand that she is in an emotionally abusive relationship yet, but what she does know is that she can't follow through on her desire for the day to hang out with her friends. She really wants to hang out with her friends, but she doesn't even bring it up to Tom. Why? Because she's been through this before, and she knows that it will only lead to Tom stonewalling her, shutting her out, giving her the silent treatment, and probably not talking to her for days. And somehow, through it all, Chloe's going to end up feeling guilty for her decision. So instead of doing any of that, Chloe does whatever it is Tom wants to do for the day. So in this example, we're going to use Lucy and Mark. In this example, it's the woman. Lucy is the covert narcissist. And they've been in a relationship for about a year. Lucy isn't really feeling so great about herself, so she decides to make Mark feel terrible about himself. And she tells Mark, you know, I'm not 100% attracted to you. But, you know, I mean, I don't think that means we should break up. But I just felt like you should know that. And of course, that makes Mark feel terrible. And he's not terribly surprised because Lucy has a tendency to make comments like this, but maybe not to that scale. So when Mark has an emotional reaction, Lucy gushes with apology. Oh, Mark, I'm so sorry. I really didn't mean to hurt your feelings. I was just, you know, you always tell me that I should tell you what's on my mind. I clearly shouldn't do that. The next time I'm thinking something, I should just keep it to myself. But see, the thing is, somebody on the outside might look at a situation like that or a story like that and say, well, Mark should just walk away. And that's true. That is very true. But Mark doesn't walk away because when these things aren't happening, the relationship to him feels like love. When Lucy's not being abusive, she's very loving. She's very affectionate. She says, I love you. And she kind of seems to feel it, or so he thinks. But all along, even though Mark is convincing himself this is love, he's always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And this is an emotionally abusive relationship. And now anybody can say something that hurts your feelings inadvertently. It happens, where we can't go through this life without hurting somebody's feelings. But with covert emotional abuse, it's consistent throughout the relationship. So the other person in the relationship develops a self-esteem deficiency. They don't feel good about themselves at all because the other person is constantly, although subtly, tearing them down. Okay, example number 3, we're going to use Caleb and Michelle. In this example, Caleb is the covert narcissist. And they have some mutual friends, as couples tend to do, right? But Michelle gets into an argument with one of them. That person did something that was really inexcusable. And Michelle's just trying to find a way to get over it. So she talks to her significant other, Caleb, who happens to be a covert narcissist. Now, Caleb never in any of the conversation takes Michelle's side. But you know, he's the good guy, and he's just playing devil's advocate. So he's taking the other person's perspective and saying, well, maybe this person thought this, or was trying to say this or that, coming up with all these excuses for the other person's behavior. But never in the conversation does Caleb admit that Michelle was right in any way, or that she's justified for her feelings. Instead, he tries to convince her that she needs to just get over it. Just get over it. So Michelle walks away feeling very unsatisfied with the conversation. And then she finds out that Caleb had a conversation with his mutual friend and completely threw her under the bus. That he put the blame on Michelle for everything. And never in that conversation did he seem to feel the need to play devil's advocate. I wonder why. Because he's a covert abuser, and Michelle is his target. So now these are 3 examples of covert abuse and how it may manifest in a relationship. Again, it's not the only way that these things can manifest. It can be something really tiny, it can be something even bigger, and oftentimes it involves cheating and gaslighting. These are big issues, but you can bet that the covert narcissist always maintains that plausible deniability. So now you might be starting to realize how that death by paper cut analogy might be accurate. Over time, if you get a little paper cut here and a little one there and a little one there, maybe a bigger one over here, and they're all bleeding, it's gonna cause some damage. And in the case of covert emotional abuse, you're not losing blood. What you're losing is your self-esteem and your sense of self-worth. Your sense of self is really what you're losing. What's so devious and so damaging about it is that you don't realize how much it's hurting you until you get to the point where you realize that you've bled out, right? And you have no more to give. And that's the point when you start looking for answers. And hopefully you come across some information about covert emotional abuse and know that you're not alone. So for me, when I was in it, I would talk to people eventually. I didn't talk about the stuff that was going on at first because I knew that it would sway other people's opinion of this person, and I didn't feel like I could walk away at that point. But when I did start talking about it, people would tell me, that's what you're dealing with, that's emotional abuse. That person is emotionally abusive. And these people were very smart, but I was not ready to label it as abuse because these things individually seemed so minor, right? Some of them not so minor. And when it wasn't happening, it felt normal. It felt like love. And that's what I didn't know. I didn't know that emotional abuse could be so subtle, and I didn't know that it could sometimes feel like love. I was wrong. So if you're in this situation, the best thing you can do right now is learn everything you can about emotional abuse, covert emotional abuse. You may want to look into covert narcissism as well. Now, narcissists aren't the only type of covert abusers out there, but it's common for covert narcissists to exhibit these types of behaviors in relationships. So if you want more information about that, I have a video, I'll link to it so you can check that out. And if you found this video helpful, please like it. And if you want to see more like it, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can be notified whenever I post new videos. And I will see you next time.